Okay, well, we're going to get started. We hope others will come in and they'll catch up with us. So I wanted to introduce myself and welcome you. My name is Bonnie Politz. I'm partnering with Mike Hernandez on the Youth System Strengthening Community Practice. Could we go to the next slide? There we are. So I'm in Washington, D.C., and this is my second year of co-facilitating this community of practice where we're really trying to learn more about systems strengthening and systems change impacting young people around the globe. Mike?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike. I'm the Community of Practice Youth Advisor with the YSS team, and I'm very happy to be here with you all, and I'm very excited to share some of our thoughts and reflections about this amazing topic about peace building. So welcome, everybody, and happy to be here.
Next slide.
We're going to go through some topics in the agenda. We already had the introductions. We're going to have a review of the youth system framework by Bonnie Politz, and then we're going to have hearing about youth in peace processes and shifting norms. That discussion, and at the end, we're going to have these amazing thoughts and reflections with our presenters. So, Bonnie.
Sure. Next slide, please. So we have been framing our discussions around systems strengthening and systems change using the Youth Systems Framework. The Youth Systems Collaborative is a partnership of about 10 international organizations that my colleague Claire Ignatowski and I started pulling together about almost 4 years ago, where we brought competitors in the international development space together to find how we could learn from each other about our work in systems change and to share case studies and to try and promote what's working to a broader audience. Through that, we were able to get some funding to create a framework. And this is the framework we've been using as part of the Youth System Strengthening Community of Practice to share stories about how people around the globe are making a difference at the systems level. So I'm not going to go through it. You can see it. Today, I know we're going to be focusing a lot on norms and mindsets and policy and actually stakeholder collaboration in making change in a couple of countries and globally. So we can move on from that. So these are the members of the Youth Systems Collaborative. I won't read them off, but you can see who they are, and we're very excited that we're all together. And Mike, you want to take this?
Yes, please. If you want to know more about the communities of practice, you can join us at youthpower.org. You can register, and then you can look for the connect button, and then go through the COP pages, discussion groups, and future events. We'll be more than happy to have you there. Next, please.
Okay. So we're going to get started, and we have 3 incredible speakers. Saji Prelis, who is Director of Children and Youth Programs at Search for Common Ground, and also the co-chair of a global coalition focusing on youth peace and security. We have Alakiir Chol from South Sudan, who is an incredibly effective youth leader working on Youth Talk, which she'll describe, and which has led to make a difference about focusing policies that need to change on sexual harassment and forced marriages. Christian Achaleke is from Cameroon and is working on international development and peace building. He's executive director of the local Youth Corner Cameroon and is a youth peace ambassador for the Central Africa region. And you'll get to meet them a little bit more as we go on. So we're going to move on now, and I'm going to give this over to, and to remind people that if you have questions, could you please put them in the chat? Right now, I do see somebody's hand raised, but if you have something you could put in the chat that we could respond to, that would be great. So we will move on, and I'm going to give this over to Saji.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, friends, for inviting us to be part of this discussion. It is truly a pleasure to be part of Youth Power Learning Community and giving Search for Common Ground an opportunity to be part of this conversation. I just want to take a brief moment to tell you what Search for Common Ground is. Search is one of the largest oldest peace building organizations working in about 40 countries around the world. When we look at peace and security issues and conflict and violence issues, we know that they are faced by a society. To address the societal grievances, we need to have society-wide approaches. So we work across sector of society, from artists to women's groups to religious leaders, military, police, and governmentally political actors also, and also in prisons. A significant part of the populations we work with are young because of the countries we work in are significantly young populations too. Vast majority of the population below the age of 30 ranges between 55% to 80% in some of these countries. So we work a lot with young people. But we also realize that the tools we have need to engage a society writ large. So we work a lot with media that has a pulse of a nation and the ability to influence the hearts and minds of a society. So we use radio and television programs to participatory theater that engages in villages, over 2,000 to 3,000 people in the village. But media has an ability to get people to see the things that divide them, but bring them together to see that they can act on the commonalities they have, so that they attack a common problem as opposed to each other. So we work a lot with media itself. Next slide, please. So building off of that, I just want to take a moment to share with you, next slide, please, with you a little bit about how we came to creating a system change process at the policy level, shaping policy and rules within institutions. But to do that, we realized that working at the country level, while it was necessary, it needed a global level work as well, to create a set of norms globally about how young people need to be seen and engaged. So we created an enduring change strategy to see young people as leaders in peace and security itself. Next, please. And here's a timeline of our work. And the first thing that we really had to shape was a set of policies and a political norms of how to see young people. We were guided by how seeing young people as troublemakers, guided by a set of policy panics that saw young people as a burden and a problem that needs to be resolved. And we wanted to shift that norm towards seeing young people as partners in peace and security efforts. So that was the first level of systems level work that we were trying to focus on and build. Next, please. The second was, now that we have these policies in place and political norms in place, that doesn't mean it actually shapes the system. We need to make sure that institutions have the commitment and the ability to respond to these policies and norms. So we actually worked on and focused on strengthening institutional commitments to these policies and norms also. Next, please. And the third, moving into the next few years, is really around evidence, strengthening networks of young people, but also focusing on resources and innovative financing, which is another component of the palette around systems change. So you're looking at norms, mindsets, policies, and resource mobilization. And those are the kinds of within the systems palette that we've been trying to do, to think of an enduring change process as opposed to short-term project mindset work. Next, please. So we know that systems changes cannot happen just by individuals alone. It requires all of us coming together. So we brought together civil society actors, brought these issues to the UN and said, let's work together. And we created the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security, one of the largest coalitions now addressing the nexus of youth and peace and security issues, with over 100 organizations from intergovernmental bodies, international NGOs, donors, academics, and more importantly, also youth-led organizations. It's co-chaired between the UN's Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Search for Common Ground, and the United Network of Young Peace Builders. And this is significant because when we are looking at working with young people, we realize that we can't work with young people for young people. We need to work with them as partners, and we have to walk that talk. So the Global Coalition has, from the very beginning, has been co-chaired by a UN entity, a civil society organization, CERT, and a youth-led organization named United Network of Young Peace Builders. And this kind of modeling we had to practice and lead by example that empowered others. And this was the beginning of that enduring change process. Next, please. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of, next please, about how to shape the policy norms. But to shape those policy norms, I want to actually first understand what the issues were. And I mentioned policy panic. A policy panic that was guided by a set of questions, important questions, but the questions that we were asking was that, why are young people joining violent extremist groups? What are the push and pull factors towards violent extremism? Why are young people doing drugs or joining gangs? Very important questions to understand and unpack. But we realized that those might not be the only questions we should be asking. Next, please. We need to ask new set of questions. If we are trying to focus on peace and security efforts, the most important question we hadn't asked ourselves was a very basic, simple question, but very difficult to fathom. And the simple question was, why are most young people peaceful? While we asked, why are young people joining groups? We didn't understand why youth are more peaceful. So we spent a lot of our resources addressing needs of a small group of people based on a policy panic. And then we ask ourselves, what are we doing with this effort? We are neglecting the excluded majority of young people who are actually not committing violence. We know that young people feel excluded. So by incentivizing a small group to choose peace, we are sending the message that vast majority of them to get attention, resources, be away from exclusion is to cause trouble. So we cannot go down that path only. So that's why this question about why are most youth peaceful is an important question that guided us in the policy shaping environment. Next, please. So I'm going to share with you now a little bit of the journey of that policy shaping process itself, because policies don't just come to life overnight. There was a process here. In 2015, next please, we had the first historic resolution on youth, peace and security, Resolution 2250. It's the first time that the Security Council body acknowledged the role young people play in peace and security efforts, away from seeing them as troublemakers to seeing them as partners. And this resolution articulated that first resolution. And it was something that the Security Council had voted on, but the journey for it to happen was led by young people. So over 11,000 young people from 109 countries really shaped the resolution itself. So it's another example of how young people have shaped a global policy instrument itself. And it didn't stop there. The second resolution started in 2018, focused on a really close, difficult space on peace processes. Again, policy shaping at a highest level that happen in closed environments. The Security Council recognized that peace processes don't lead to sustaining peace. So, and how the important role young people play was recognized. And this was an important turning point to say peace processes can be more inclusive. And this is the second resolution that happened. And then the third resolution came about. Next, please. That's in 2020, Security Council Resolution 2535. It focuses on the important role young people play and in the civic spaces. The more rights they enjoy, the more they are active in civic spaces. But this resolution recognized the shrinking space that they occupy. And it was a significant resolution because for the first time it recognized that young people's work requires protection and safeguarding also within these difficult environments. What it also did was, it also recognized, linked climate change to this process, and it recognized the role young people play in climate and weather-related issues. So what it does is, next please, it actually powerfully recognizes that young people are a political force for peace. And what collectively what policy making does is makes young people feel, away from being excluded, feels recognized, seen, and heard. And that's the collective accomplishment of these policy instruments itself. Next, please. And I want to quickly share with you some institutional commitments that are happening around the same lines. Next, please. You can continue the other pieces on this. Young people are not waiting around. You see around the world, young people are creating coalitions. Regional networks are coming together. And in the United States Congress, there is a bill in the United House of Representatives that bring young people as partners in peace and security. it's also several countries are setting up national action plans. One of the key things is a misunderstanding of seeing young people as troublemakers in the global South only. But places like Canada, Finland are also taking this on. So this is a universal agenda, not an issue that is relevant only in conflict-affected countries in the global South. Next, please. And over the next several years, there is guidance coming out for public officials about how to develop youth inclusive strategies and policies, and how to strengthen inclusive peace processes that are broken to can become more inclusive. So over the next 5 years, the global coalition will be unfolding these and collaborating across agencies to bring to life the youth partnership at the country level, global, and to the global level. So this is an example of young people's roles in policy shaping itself. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions from the audience. And I'm going to ask Mike for some help in facilitating if there are any questions at all, before I go to the next part of the conversation with you by bringing the other two speakers in.
I believe you can go on, Sajid. There are no questions in the chat by now.
Okay, fantastic.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Bonnie.
So, when I see your question about why are most youth peaceful, it connects so much, just as a comment, about the proactive work that's been going on about over the last 20 years around positive youth development. And that was the same thing. We kept saying very early, like in the 1990s, we're asking the wrong questions. It isn't just about how do we prevent problems and prevent young people from coming into gangs and getting pregnant early and dropping out of school and getting involved in violent activity. It's about what do young people need in their lives to grow and become healthy, positive adults, and all that along the way during adolescence. What do they need? And we know things that are working. So the questions, we haven't gotten there. It's better, but we still haven't shifted a lot of the policy and financing and all the things that are involved in systems change to reflect the new questions we need to be asking and what we need to be measuring. We just don't need to be measuring how many kids get locked up and how many drop out of school and how many get pregnant. We need to know how many were involved in quality after school programs, how many were involved in conflict resolution processes in their schools, how many, where are the kinds of clinics, the mental health. We have an increased number of mental health clinics to serve the needs of adolescents during all the changes that are going on in their lives. So we're in that process. And to me, part of this work that you're doing is it's taking what we were saying for so many years and making it real in the peace and security arena. So it's more of a comment that there's a real connection here, and somehow we have to be strategic about lifting all this up.
Absolutely, Bonnie, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And this is a journey that is, not new. And the positive youth development framework also is a really good framework to think of how to connect these dots. But I think also the ability to strengthen political will is why we actually focused on institutional commitments to act on these things. So there's a whole of society almost approach that is required to shape policy and shape social norms at a community level too. So this takes a lot of us to work together, and it takes years sometimes. Systems change happens incrementally, not seismically at once. So this is these examples from the positive youth development work all the way to youth peace and security agenda are decades and decades in the making. So thanks for reminding us of that. Any other comments from anybody? If not, it is really my pleasure to introduce to you, the audience and others who are watching us, an amazing young woman joining us from South Sudan. Alakiir Chol, you're most welcome today, and we thank you for making time to be with us to share some of your wisdom. You have done some amazing things as a young woman in South Sudan, tackling some dangerous and difficult systems at the community level. Tell us a little bit about your story and what inspired you to do what you do today. The floor is yours, Alakiir. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for coming in.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Once again, my name is Alakiir Chol from South Sudan, and I'm supporting the Youth Talk project at Search for Common Ground. Telling you my story, I was born in the capital of Sudan, Khartoum, and I spent most of my primary in Uganda, but came back here in 2017, where I joined my high school. And in my high school is where I got involved in a lot of activities around school. Like, for example, there was a peace garden project where I worked with other 15 young people in like designing a peace garden. So, and we were supported by UNIMIS. For this, that peace garden, we planted a garden and it had a symbol of a heart. And this heart, it symbolizes that for us to keep that garden alive, to plant it and all this stuff, it symbolizes that for lasting peace in South Sudan. The garden was designed with the shape of a heart that symbolized the human heart, and it was upheld by two hands, meaning that for us to acquire peace, it must start from within, and then we can depict it to others. So not only that, but I was also in the gender-based violence club in the school. So in that club, we used to address issues like school-related gender-based violence, and also we would reach out to the communities. We live from the school to the nearby communities, like the camps that are around the school, to talk to those people who don't know of the gender-based violence, to talk about sending their children to school, and also the importance of educating a girl child. And I was also involved in the journalism club, and through that journalism club is where I got involved in the Youth Talk project that I'm working with, that I'm supporting here at Search for Common Ground currently. Next slide, please.
Alakiir, could I just take a second? Could everybody please mute themselves, because we're getting some background noise? Thank you so much.
Okay. So since I joined the Youth Talk project that aimed at amplifying young people's voices through media, and it started in 2019. So through this project, I learned how to produce radio talk shows to talk about critical social issues in my community. I also learned how to conduct talk shows that engage stakeholders, experts, and also to hold intergenerational meetings in the communities. So this project, it aims at amplifying the voices of young people to participate meaningfully in peace building initiatives, and also to strengthen mutual understanding and collaboration between the adults and the young people, and also to capture and share learning and tools among policymakers and the practitioners. Next slide. Next slide.
I believe that is the, oh, okay.
Which slide would you like, Alakiir?
Yeah, it's this one. It's fine. Okay, so talking about what inspired me, all this that I managed to participate in, like the Peace Garden project, it's the other slide, please. Yeah, this one. Yeah, thanks. So I was saying, what inspired me in all this is that for the Peace Garden project, we're mostly dealing with peace, and I learned a lot from there, because we're not only working on peace, but we also taught about the human rights. So from being taught about the human rights, I learned that I, as a girl, as a South Sudanese, I learned that I had a right. So from there, I thought of also telling other people of their rights, like talk, for example, of the young girls that end up getting married. I believe for them, because they don't have the knowledge, they don't know that they are not supposed to be married. So So me being able to learn that, it really gave me the courage to go out and speak to those girls, inform them of their rights so that they can stay in school and not get married at a young age. Next slide.
Alakiir, with that inspiration, and you worked on these systems that are not really at a community level when it comes to gender-based violence, the role young women play in these places. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you have achieved with all this work from radio to addressing the community needs. Share with us some of these accomplishments, please.
Okay. All right. Through the Youth Talk project, we were able to conduct interviews, hold talk shows, and not only that, but also have intergenerational dialogues in the communities. So through them, we were able to inform the young people of, because they didn't have the information. So we were able to, the young people became aware of some of the challenges that are affecting them. And also they became educated, because we talk about several things in these radio talk shows, talking about the disadvantages of early marriage, talking about education and many things. So through those radio talk shows, and also we go out and interview these young people and also the adults. So they became educated, entertained, and engaged through the radio talk shows. And we also got to know their perception of things like gender-based violence, things of early marriage. What do they think of it? Is it something that people should continue with, or it's something that is wrong? And also, we managed to hold intergenerational dialogues. So communities started opening up on the harmful practices and tradition, and they became aware of the negative impact of some of the cultural practices that affect, talking of our cultures, most of them and discriminate against women and the girls. So another accomplishment that we managed, it's outreach. So in the outreaches, we managed to hold 8 intergenerational dialogues where young people sat down with the elder adults and they discussed some of the challenges that are facing them. They managed to bring out solutions to their communities. And also there was a collaboration between the young people and the adults. Their collaboration was strengthened. And also through our talk shows, we involve in key government officials, like people from the military, to address the issues of child soldiers, people from the ministry, Speaker of the National Legislative Assembly, so that they consider also the voices of the young people. And also through us talking to those experts, we were able to get information and to disseminate it through our radio program to the public. So through all these, we acquired certain things like we acquired certain things like the gender desk. People became aware of availability of support systems. For example, survivors of gender-based violence, they became aware of where they can easily get support. And also the availability of one-stop centers. These ones, they have doctors, nurses that can help survivors of gender-based violence or early marriage. And also there's a GBV, juvenile court, that is only for GBV cases, meaning that these people that get involved into gender-based violence, they know that the perpetrators, they'll have to face the law. And also through the civil societies, people became informed of the toll-free line that they can easily call in case they're faced a challenge or there's anything that has affected them. They can call at any time and they are rescued. I think with all that,
Finish your thought. Alakiir, do you want to finish your thought?
I think with all that, that's all that I have to say.
Thank you, Alakiir. I mean, you know, this is an example, really great example of young people from a place talking about taboo, difficult subjects, at risking their own lives, but trying to use tools like media to create a new set of social norms and shaping mindsets about what policies that exist and how to utilize those policies and instruments and institutions to their benefit. So it's an example of how young people have led these efforts to socialize at a society level what the issues are around gender-based violence, around marriage, child marriage, around other security issues, and get systems to be more representative and addressing people's needs itself. So it's a fantastic example that you and many of the young people you work with have shaped. That is a collective journey of accomplishment. So congratulations and thank you so much, Alakiir, for being here and sharing this with you. And I'm going to hold off and I'm bringing my other speaker, and after that we will have some time for discussion as well. Next, please. So I'm going to bring to this conversation now Achalake Christian Leke from Cameroon. This man generally doesn't need a huge introduction. I mean, he hangs out with the Queen of England, who seems to be a fan, who won the award for recognized young leader of Africa and the continent of Africa as well, but also now advising the African Union's Peace and Security Commission too, around policy making that shapes young people as partners at a continental level. So Achalake, tell us a little bit about your story, about what do you do and what inspired you to do this kind of work? So Achalake, you've done a ton of work in this space as a young leader, recognized as a young leader in the continent of Africa, advising the African Union around the work. But tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do this work and what kind of work do you do specifically within a system like prisons? And you know, that's a really challenging environment in Cameroon. Tell us about what inspired you to work on this and what type of work did you do in the prisons itself?
Okay, thank you very much, Saji, for this opportunity to join this very important conversation. I'm really pleased to meet everyone. Christian Achaleke, what really inspired me, it's actually my childhood growing up. So I should say, unfortunately, or I don't know how to put it, but I grew in one of those communities in Cameroon, which was really known for issues around violence, crime, and many others. And growing up as a young person, I lived this on hand, and I witnessed the devastating realities of what this can do. I saw how, you know, poverty, economic deprivation, you know, exposed young people to crime and violence, and I lived it. I was into it, you know, day in, day out. But, you know, all of these experiences which I had, you know, there was a point which you know, you cannot really take it, or you are actually hoping to have a better life. Instances like, you know, burning, you know, a peer alive, you know, burning houses, destroying properties, and all of that. And all of this really scared me. And I had the opportunity to travel out of town to a different city to go to school, and that was where also I found a next level of my, you know, change in perspective, and had to start working towards you know, breaking that cycle of violence which young people find themselves in. And also I started volunteering for a local organization where I was using theater to talk about community issues. This really helped me to identify myself, to discover that doing peace work is good business, rather than you know, the realities of violence that we lived. So basically, Saji, this is actually how the fire got lead it. And since then, it's been a journey of risking. It's been a journey of, using my experience, my story, my perspective to shape programming perspectives. And interestingly enough, this organization that I started volunteering for in 2007, where I was still a young boy with no salary or anything. Today, this organization, I serve as the executive director with a team of over 25 young people who are working to shaping peace and security conversation in Cameroon and across the continent. And I mean, I think my background explains why prison is one of the places where I was working at, where I've been working in terms of work, because of the fact that the prison in my city, 60% of those who were there are my peers. And I lived the experience of how when young people go to prison and they come back, they become even worse because we have a very broken and irresponsive prison system, which rather radicalizes than reforming and transforming young people who have actually been in crime or not. And also the justice system is very broken, where we have people in prison who have never committed any crime. Corruption and all of that has really shaped our penitentiary system and our justice system to be very pejorative. And with over 70, about 85% of prison population made up of young people. So, I mean, Saji, maybe this is in terms of background, my background and why I work in prison as one of my core focus areas.
Thank you, Alakiir. Maybe with that background in mind, very briefly, you can talk a little bit about what have you accomplished working in these prisons? As you said, prisons and the justice system is where young people see the prison system and the justice as the perpetrators, and the justice system sees young people as perpetrators. What have you done to transform the perpetrator mentality to a shared protector mentality? Share with us concretely, what have you accomplished within that system then?
Well, Saji, while looking at a system which does not work, for me and my peers, we were working, we told ourselves we need to try to fix by designing programs that would take into consideration the realities. So we designed an initiative which is called Creative Skills for Peace, which later metamorphosed to what we call prisonpreneurship. And the whole idea was to support young people in prison in terms of rehabilitation and reintegration, because government was not caring about that. And interestingly enough, for us coming as a group of young people to respond to youth issues was a big blow, to everyone. They were like, wow, so young people can do this. So we're actually replacing or fitting in a space where state has not been effectively working on. And our model was very simple. We identify young people who should serve as trainers. We do consultations with young people within prison and prison system to identify skills and tools and mechanisms that would work for them. We advise them on that. Then we set up training programs within prison. Now, there are many training programs within prisons, but some of them come with a more of humanitarian dimension. To us, we brought in a lot of peace building tools within this conversation. And of course, reflecting around personality, identity of these young people to be able to shape our programming. And to do this, we started with one prison. And interestingly enough, in terms of resources, we didn't have money. Saji, we started this with little or no money. And gradually, in 2016, we had the recognition from Her Majesty the Queen, where we were given by the Commonwealth £7,000. Then we invested £7,000 all into one facility. And the success was really amazing. And then government said, oh, guys, you could improve. And then we did 1 to 2 to 3 to 8 prisons where we had about 5,000 inmates that we're working with. So our model included, psychosocial support and talking to them done by young people, because the youth to youth perspective is something which in Cameroon is not really the case. It's so, old people oriented. So this was a real big shift. But to the old as well, they could see a responsive group of young people who were not asking for government to give them money, but have been able to raise within themselves and have got recognitions. And we started working on training them on production from very scratch. We bought machines, we created poultry farm in prison, and even the kind of skills which we developed were skills that will respond to their identity issues, to their personality issues, to their social cohesion issues, and also raising issues of patriotism because a lot of them leave prisons to commit more crimes, and recidivism was very, very high. So in terms of our process, we have been doing this, and when we train them for about 7 months, then we give them startup capital. We actually created the Prison Entrepreneurship Award, which was the first of its kind. Why do we award entrepreneurs out of prison and then we don't give in prison? And that's what we started doing. And they started producing. But the long and short story is that our aim was to stop recidivism. And today we are proud of, our former prisoners who are out of prison and are producing and are even winning recognitions for their work. We have one story I want to share. He's called Michael. Michael was incarcerated for 135 years in prison for 7 counts of different crimes. And we met Michael in his 12th year in prison. And he was devastated. There was no hope. He didn't see the future. And he started working with us in our program, among many others. And gradually, we saw transformation from one stage to another. And we started working on his probation. And we filed with him. And as we speak today, Michael spent 16 years. He's out of prison. He's in the capital city. He actually runs his own workshop. And Michael has received recognition in terms of national conversation and many others. Now, the success of this project, in terms of the outputs which the prisoners were able to produce, we had international exhibitions. And, in one of them, I actually was with Prince Harry. And he was really marveled to see that, young people in prisons in a country like Cameroon, which is known for many other hideous things, are bringing some change. Now, how is this shifting system? The first thing is our project was able to help shape the face of the country in terms of this penitentiary administration system, because people could see positive things coming. In terms of how they see young people, there has been a big shift because of the work we did. For the first time in the history of the Youth Day in Cameroon, the National Youth Day was launched in prison because of the fact that we were able to take the results of our work to policymakers, to government officials to say, this is what we are doing. This is a space we need to invest in, because we could have a prison system where they produce what they consume and it saves us the spending and all of that. And we had now to influence even stakeholders working on human rights, habeas corpus, and all of that to come into the prison system to reflect in terms of those who are jailed for no crime. And these actually influenced a lot. Now, Saji, to round up with my perspectives, I think for me as a person, it's a big achievement to see even one person who was, into crime, more than 100 years of prison, not going back to crime and resisting. And that's where we are able to use them as violent interrupters. In one of the cities, we set up the first barber shop out of prison run by prisoners. It was a very tough concept to do, but today, running for 3 years, and we've never had an incident where the community comes and they receive the services and they go back. It has really helped to work on restorative justice. It's really helped to build trust. And we are seeing this complete shift in terms of government interest to work on prison. And that's why within the Ministry of Youth Affairs, they have included former prisoners among those who can benefit from the state-funded programs, which are usually done. And as we speak, Michael just recently got admission into a national mentorship program for young entrepreneurs. So, with these bits and pieces, Saji, I feel that our process, we are learning as a group of young people, but our resilience and the spirit to dare is what has been able to put us at this level in terms of success of the work we do.
Thank you, Alakiir. That's a brilliant example of really trying to have a system of a prison, work with prison authorities, prisoners, and the community, and to shape a set of new norms and mindsets about who prisoners are, and new practice of actually how to actually connect those dots, and shape political institutions like the government to create policies and a good practice to your strengthening institutions' commitment to act now. So that's a really nice example of shaping a system. And I've met Michael, spoken to him. I've seen him on BBC, highlighted in this too. So he's an example, and many others that he's surrounded by. So I'm going to pause here. I'm bringing Mike Hernandez to see if there are any questions from the audience. I know there's one question about drugs and why are young people going into drugs. But are there any other questions from the audience? And with Mike Hernandez's help, we can facilitate and make sure that the panelists can answer.
Thank you, Saji. It's been a pleasure to listen to Achaliki and Alakiir and you, Saji. The audience asked, what have been the biggest challenges in these peace processes? That could be answered by Achaliki, Alakiir, or you, Saji. What have been the biggest challenges that you guys have faced during this process, peace processes?
Maybe Alakiir, you want to start, and I'll come to Achalaki. Keep your answers very, very brief because of time, and I'll close. Come on, Alakiir.
Okay, to answer that question, some of the biggest challenges that I faced, not me alone, but also my other colleagues in this peace process, is that it's like really hard to shift how our people think. Like, it's not easy for them to shift because they've been living this way for quite long. So sometimes even it was at first hard to bring these people to sit down and to have these discussions, because sometimes maybe they didn't want to involve the women or the girls, and also sometimes they don't want to listen to the young people. But we tried hard so that they could sit down together and bring possible solutions to some of these problems that are facing them, and they were able to understand one another and to see the youth from a different angle, not the negative side. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Alakiir. Fantastic. Achalaki, do you want to come in as well?
Well, Saji, I think just like my dear sister said, one of the challenges that which we faced in our work is in terms of securing government buy-in. In a context like ours, which is an active conflict, it's quite very challenging. And that's why we rely a lot on evidence-based advocacy, evidence-based mobilization. So really working on the proof of the success of what we do to be able to pull this interest. It has really been a big issue. In terms of resources, it remains very key. And of course, Saji, you bear with me that research has proven that over 60% of youth organizations working on this conversation operate under $10,000 budget. You know, I always say $10,000 is a salary for a staff, maybe for a multinational organization. But young people risk their lives and all of that, and resources still stays to be a big issue. So I think that we need to be able to take into consideration these and ensure that the meaningful participation of young people also means that young people should lead, young people should be provided with resources, mentorship, and of course, capacity to effectively lead the processes which they have taken charge of. So Saji, I mean, these are two dimensions which I would like to put. And of course, you know, I always speak in terms of making recommendation and an advocacy. I think that having stakeholders working on this conversation at very senior level, it's an opportunity for me to say, please, young people are ready, and we need to keep on engaging them because our population is increasing every day. And we have very inspiring, very energetic, very passionate who are already doing good work. What they need is just a little push. So I hope that this policy conversation could be able to shift into more collaborations where we see young people working with big organizations like yours. We've had good example working with Search for Common Ground, and it has really been transformative for us as a group of young people. I mean, this is my last words in terms of advocacy.
Thank you, Achalaki. I'm just to add, I think you're talking really about trust and financial challenges young people face, but an important petal within the systems framework is resource flows, and making sure the resource flows move to young people as well. But we also talk about policy and political will to act, and that's where the policies come in and the services that wrap around with policies matter. But I also want to build on Alakiir's point. What we have seen across the world, the number one challenge, the greatest challenge young people face, more than physical or another, is sociocultural. It is within our homes, within our families, within our neighborhoods, communities, and at the country level. the lack of trust, the lack of ways that people are young, seen as young. So this social cultural barrier is one of the biggest challenges young people face that are not taken seriously. So this idea of for shaping norms and mindsets is so critical. So that societal level sees young people as their partners, not a burden, not a problem, but partners. So this shaping mindsets and norms at a systems level is so fundamental to shape a system to see young people differently. And so I think that this is coming from research from across the world. The If I Disappear report, I'll share the link on the chat, highlights this as well. With that, I just want to make sure that we are closing this and see if you have any other, we can continue the conversation in the chat, but I want to close this section here and maybe go and hand this over to Bonnie and Mike to take us to the next place.
Thank you so much, Saji and Alakiir and Achaleke. I mean, when we started this youth system strengthening community of practice, I know many of you have, some of you have been on some of our other ones. We had ones last year. We focused on Morocco and youth workforce centers and how what has been learned through mapping and the data and capacity development and cross-sector collaboration, they've really now helped to change some of the system around youth career centers and youth workforce. So we have, if you go back onto Youth Power and to our site, you will see there are examples from Morocco and other countries, Tanzania, Mozambique, of places where in different perspectives from different systems, change is happening. But I think these are two incredible examples, to talk about gender-based violence and to know how difficult that is, in all countries to even bring to the table and to see what's going on, to make those changes that Alakiir described in terms of having a new office, about having a hotline, about having different things that government, has now changed some of their policies and implemented, is incredible change. And it's not something that happens easily. We know that. And so there's a real story to tell there, and we'd love to follow up and sort of learn a little bit more about that. And also, from Christian, the whole prison system approach. I know there are people on from El Salvador and from some other countries where the whole crime and violence piece is so huge. And there was a question about, drugs and young people getting into drugs and coming into that whole system, the crime and violence system into prisons from that perspective. And we have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of good work going on around family systems therapy and changing the approach to say it isn't just about the young person, it's about the system that surrounds them and their family and their community. So we have lots of work to do, and yet we're learning a lot from all of you as we do these sessions together. And these are being recorded and they will be shared back with you, so that you can share this conversation with others and let them know about some of the work that's going on internationally through search, and then the work in both Cameroon and South Sudan. So we just want to thank you and appreciate it. I don't think there are any final questions from the group. I'm looking, I know Mike's been posting some things about how to get into and look at some of our past work from the other community of practice sessions on Youth Power. There's a link there. And Mike, I'll give it over to you about talking a little bit about some of these other things.
All right, if you want to look for more on youth inclusion and democracy and peace building efforts, you can just click on the links I just posted in the chat. They're over here on the screen. And if you have any other link of source that we can share with us, you can post them also in the discussion groups that I just posted on youthpower.org. You can do it right there too. Next slide, please. Upcoming Learning Network events. If you want to join us on the next events we have on Wednesday, the 22nd, we have the new normal lessons from COVID-19 and youth-led solutions on sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence, gender COP. You can find all the events on youthpower.org. In August, we have a webinar on lessons from developing national scalable strategies in Jordan and other upcoming events on sustainable youth groups and networks, youth-led implementation research, and more. All that you can find it at youthpower.org in the community of practice event pages. Thank you for joining us today. Bonnie.
Yeah, I would just say, if any of you online, who are on the call, have some suggestions of places and people who are making these incredible changes and there's a story to tell, please let us know. We're more than willing. We've got some things lined up, like from Jordan, but always happy to listen and learn. So Saji, Alakiir, Christian, thank you so much for your time and your input, and this will be broadly shared. And to all the background folks, Stephanie and everyone else, thank you for your assistance in making this happen. These take a lot of work to get done. So we hope to see you all again, and have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Okay. Thank you very
all.
much.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Mike, Stephanie, team.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. See you in the
Yes.
next. Bye-bye.